So this is the Module 4 project that I've gone ahead and set up for everyone just to save you a little bit of time. So see there's the Module 4 folder. You'll see there's a geodatabase with a BC census data featured data set that's already in here with the BC boundary file. So you'll see this layer here. You'll also see a current year estimate. This is where you can put your Simply Analytics shapefile that you downloaded. So this will be empty, but mine's here because I've extracted this data here. So you'll see that you've got your Simply Analytics layer with this really long jumbled name that doesn't mean anything. It gives you the date that you downloaded it, so that's slightly helpful, but beyond that, it's not very useful. And if you drag this layer over and you open the attribute table, you'll also see that the variable names are just value 0, 1, and 2. The reasoning behind this is that shapefiles are an archaic, old file management system that goes back to the 1980s or 90s. And column names are limited to 8 characters because that was back when storage space was actually an issue. But if you open this variable names.txt, you'll see a list of variable names that correspond to what we downloaded. So value 0 is the total population, 1 is the household income, 2, food expenditure. Yours should be the same, but it might differ if you selected things in a different manner. So the first step is we want to rename this, and we also want to give the column headers. And we also need to change the projection, because if you look at the spatial reference, this is in WGS 1984 because Simply Analytics data is in the Web Mercator projection, right? Not very useful. So I've gone ahead and created a feature data set, and that will go ahead and reproject it for us. So the specific choice of feature data set, I leave it to you to look at the feature data set. You can right click, go to properties, and figure out what the spatial reference system is and why we're using this exact one. But we can rename both the file and the column names in one step if we go to import feature class. Navigate to the current year estimate Simply Analytics here. Name it something that makes sense to you, like BC subdivisions 2021. And then under fields, if you expand this, it will show the different fields that are in this table. You got value 0, 1, and 2. It's easy enough to rename these if you just click rename. Sometimes you got to do it twice. So population. Number 1 is income. And number 2 is food cost. And if you run this, it should go ahead and do all this for you. Now you can open this up and see that all of our variables of interest have been moved over, renamed, and it looks like I renamed this the wrong thing. I typed 2012. It's easy enough to fix that here. If you remove it and re-add it, that will refresh. Now, you'll notice another thing. The BC boundary file and the census subdivision data looks different, right? Doesn't look like it does on Simply Analytics either. So on Simply Analytics, they clip everything by the coastal boundaries, but they give you the unclipped data. Reason being is going back to that whole resolution thing I talked about last week. Basically, it takes more space or storage space to store all the points associated with this than it does to just represent a simplified coastline. But Obviously, I think you can see this isn't useful for calculating population density. So we have one more step to go through before we can get on to that. If you go to geoprocessing and type in the word clip, we can run the clip tool. So I'll talk more about what these different overlay tools do, but you can think of clip as basically like a cookie cutter. So if this is our cookie dough, the BC subdivisions, BC boundaries would be our cookie cutter. We're going to take this cookie dough, we're going to stamp our cookie cutter on top of it to get just what's left over. So you set the subdivisions as the input, the clip feature will be the boundary, and then we can leave the default because that makes sense for us, and then click run, and you'll see the resulting output in a moment. So the resulting output now is we have all the subdivisions, but just for the land areas. So we can use this. You can note the difference between these two layers. Kind of hard to tell with them in the same color scheme. Let's change the color of this one to something different. There. So you see there's a bit of a difference in the area covered by these two files. So now we can move on to our actual calculations.